so that you can see these clear trend changes. Now, keep in mind, this is going to be a little bit more on the aggressive side, because frankly, if you want to stay a little bit less aggressive, you've got to wait for a break. In other words, it's got to break a good swing. But if you're a little bit more aggressive, then you can draw on your charts. Okay. So what I'm going to show you here, I just went ahead and basically started this at midnight last night. Okay. But if you look at this chart right here, I think you can clearly tell where it's going to either break down or it's going to break up. Okay. So here's a line to draw on it. There's your low and your highs way up here, right? Okay. Now that's the channel that it's in. Okay. But if you notice though that you also have a low right this very moment, even a little bit higher low. So this area right here is lightning 3. I also draw a line across here. And I also want to look left to trade the right. And if I see another swing that's really, really close to this, then I'm going to draw it also. And that's going to be either here or here. Okay, so we're going to draw another line across here. I'm going to show you how you can see these. And keep in mind, these are drawn all the time in the room. So this isn't just hokey stuff. It really works. Okay, now here's another example right here, though. Okay, if you look at this chart right here on this side where you had this big thrust down, retrace, thrust down, retrace, thrust down again, where is what we consider to be the line in the sand long short on this particular chart? Now, if you were watching this in real time at the time, you would have seen you took out this swing here, but this is your swing right here that they would need to take out to really head to the upside. See your high, your low, your lower high, your lower low. So I always look at the little bit larger swings like that, because this one will get you in trouble too many times where it just breaks this little swing across here and you take it long when it goes up. The cursor shouldn't be small. It's huge. It's the one that I use. Is everybody seeing a big blue cursor like a cyan and black? If not, I can go to the big Windows one instead. Nobody seeing that? Okay, let's just go to Windows and I'll fix that then. We'll go to an extra large cursor on Windows instead, because I've got the blue one. You can see the blue one here though, right, where I'm circling that. For some reason, GoToWebinar's not showing my cursor the same. Okay, so we'll go to extra large, standard extra large system schemes. Let's see, extra large system scheme. We don't want black. Default. Now let's try this one right here. You seeing that cursor right there, pretty good size? Because it's a big one, unless it's not showing big on yours. I don't know what to tell you on cursor. Sometimes, I can actually see a big cursor on my chart right here, and you're not seeing the same cursor. So I don't know what to do. There must be something to do with GoToWebinar. Let's go back. I'll see if I can fix it just real quick though. Because see, we're using this big one right here and apply it. Okay, you're able to see it though. I guess we'll have to live with it because I've got a cursor about a good 3/4 inch large. I don't know why GoToWebinar is showing it, not showing it. But anyway, what you want to do is you want to get in the habit of looking left to trade the right. Okay, see how you have a low, a high, lower low. Like I like to look at ABC type moves on these little bitty bars because that's pretty important. Because on this side of the chart, this is still the right side of the chart till it breaks 11. I don't think you're really heading up. In other words, even though obviously it did, right? It took out this swing. See how you have a low, a high, higher low, and higher high. But look how much sweeter that was. Okay, and notice that it even kissed and gave you a little trade. Okay, so I personally think that you can get some pretty good trades like that. Okay, at least 10 tickers. See, that's at least a 10 ticker trade. Okay, so let's go to the start of the midnight so we can see where this thing's going. All right, so we have a phantom type trade setup, right? And right here is midnight, right here. Okay, so does everybody see where I'm drawing on this chart of what you're actually looking at if this decides to break to the upside? Okay, because I consider that a breakout of like a line in the sand. This is actually already a trend change because it bursted up here and it gave you a nice pullback. But this is still the same thing that we're talking about. This is all sideways junk. And then when they break these areas, they're heading back the direction of the trend. It doesn't mean that you can't still take this phantom trade here. Anything that bounces off this area right here, that's okay to take. But what we're going to talk about tonight is more to where they actually break and they head the direction you're wanting to go instead of the sideways junk. Okay. So if you draw on your charts, you'll see that they actually a lot of times come down and kiss it again. That happens a lot. And then see, they didn't take out line 0. Notice that the midband is still yellow. So this is basically, in my personal opinion, let's say you missed this here and you got up at midnight to trade. Okay. Now, what would you do in a case like this right here? Would you go ahead and put your little box like so? If they do decide to break this, would you go ahead and take a long? Would you wait for it to break, come back and kiss, and then take it? That's what most traders do. But keep in mind, like today on oil, where I called that 33, it just went below 33 and it kept on trucking. But watch what happens a lot of times. See, they kiss it, they pull back, and then they go through it. Okay, and that type of a trade, as a rule, is going to be a nice continuation type move on a trend. Okay, but until they take the left of a chart out, okay, when they've done, You know, for instance, like here, you had a lower high, okay, and then you just started chopping around and everything. But when you have a low, you have a high, you have a lower low, and then they take this area out. As long as you're trending also, you know, in other words, the overall trend is still to the upside. See, because you have a low, high, higher low, higher low, and it was trying to make a higher high, but anyway, that's actually an uptrend, right? So that's what you're looking at. Okay, now if they decide to break those, then you're ready to go the opposite direction, right? Okay, how many of you have your charts drawn on so that you know when they're going to change trends? How many of you really look for that? Because to me, I think it's pretty important to look for. Okay, let's see if we can tell, for instance, on here, if this is going to change trends. First, we got to get some kind of a swing set up. That looks like a mid-band trade to me, and it was. That's good. That's a good little mid-band trade. Okay, so now, right now on this chart, you already know where this is going to break down if it decides to break down, right? So this area right here where you're seeing a high and a low, I'll go ahead and draw it with a line so you can see it. A high and a low. And even as we speak right now, you got a little higher high, but let's see if it goes higher. Yeah, it did. All right, so this is your telling you right now that you've got a high, a low, a higher high. So this is what we call the line in the sand long short. And I had Pat asked me today, he said, when you say that, are you saying line in the sand short? And I said, no, we're actually saying line in the sand long / short. So in other words, anything above this line right here, okay, I usually draw a box. That way it's not just cut and dry that, you know, in other words, if this came back in this, breaks this box, then they're not heading up any longer. Okay, so in other words, if you're above that line, you're looking longs only. If you're below that line, you're looking shorts only. Okay. Now, do they fake it sometimes? Yes, because they like to do an A, B, C type move, barely take it out and then take up. But we're usually pretty privy to those because in the room we draw on the charts. Okay, so let's see what happened. That's a nice little trade, right? Okay, let's see if it does any kind of pullback where we can tell where the line in the sand long short is. Not quite. Not quite. And that's pretty much telling me you've got a high, a low, basically the same high right there, which is only 2 ticks higher. I don't consider that to be a line in the sand long short. If it would have had a lot higher high, I would. So let's see what it did. Mid-band trade. You're still in it, by the way. That is a mid-band trade so far. Now, is it going to work out? We don't know. Looks like it did. Okay, so there's a mid-band trade that's set up right there. Okay, now if they take out this high right here, then your new line in the sand, long / short, is going to be here, but not yet. Okay, so let's see if it did. Another little bit higher low. Okay, it took it out. All right, so you're up a little bit. Let's see if it goes up a little higher at all. That's good enough, in my opinion, to go up like that. So now if you look to the left to trade the right on this chart, does everybody see where you would be changing trends if they break it? Now, if they don't break it, they're not changing trends yet, okay? But we have to know where it's at. In other words, looking left to trade the right, you've got like a double top here, so I start my count here. High, low, higher high, okay? So this means, in my personal opinion, that line in the sand long short is right there at this very given moment. Okay, let's see if it went up higher. Looks like it did. Now that's another pullback on crude oil, and you've got to start your calculation again, right? So let's look and see. We've got a high. We've got a low, way down here as far as that goes on the bigger move. Let's see what it actually did. It's a mid-band trade. And it looks like it was a pretty good mid-band trade, a good 10 ticks, I would say, wouldn't you? I would think that would be 10 ticks. All right, but we've already got on this chart, we've got our line in the sand long short drawn on our larger move because here's your high, low, and much higher high. And of course, you can kind of stair step it too. See, that's a high, a little bit lower, a little higher, a little low, and then all the way up to here, okay? And what you don't want to do, though, is you don't want to go shorting these little bitty breaks because a lot of times they're just going to be another move to the upside. And you also want to check your Fibonacci's too. But let's say that trade worked out right there. Okay, now we have a high, low, lower high, lower low. That's telling us that maybe they could be trying to break down, but let's see if they do. Not yet. So your thrust. And again, keep in mind, you can also you've got to kind of see the overall move. Kind of like this, and then all the way, kind of like that, right? Because that's the overall move. Okay, and you'll notice that also a lot of times works with Lightning 3. If you draw Lightning 3, you'll see it. See how you have a high, low, same high, higher low, higher high. So that's your line in the sand long short on what we consider to be the conservative side of this chart. Okay, this is a little aggressive right here. Okay, if they do happen to break it, then very possibly we could change trends. Okay, let's see what it did. Looks like just a continuation to the upside to me. And did it make a fresher high? Not really. See how it just barely tweaked that top right there? You got to be careful when they do that because, well, we don't know for sure if they're going to go ahead and take it out. Let's see if they do, though. Looks like they are. Yep, definitely took it out. All right, so now looking left to trade the right. Let me get rid of lightning because we don't want to cheat on this, and it looks like it's trying to show us it went higher. Okay, so if you look here, you've got a high, a low, and a much higher high. So if you look at this chart right this very moment, your line in the sand long short is at 13. Now keep in mind, though, that even though that's at 13 right now, that's above midband, at least as far as we're concerned right now. Okay, so you don't want to consider shorting this when it's above midband. Okay, because that's where most of your trades are going to happen to the upside. Okay, so don't get in the habit of doing that. All right, let's see what it did. There's another ABC type, so that's a line in the sand long short right there. Trying to take it out. I think I'd start being a little bit more careful with this, but let's just see what it does. It's another midband trade. Now keep in mind when they're around these midbands, this is pretty good areas that they're going to change trends if they do decide to do so. So let's see what they did. Sort of iffy. No, there it went. There it went. You're good. Okay. Now right this very moment, there you go. All right, see how that took out that top again? Just barely, but enough. Okay. So now if you look at this chart, you can clearly see that your line in the sand long short is right there. Okay, at 34. Everybody sees that, right? Because what you're doing is you're constantly drawing on your chart in your mind or on your charts themselves, because you've got to be able to see these highs, these lows, these higher highs. How high is this going to go? Frankly, we don't know. I mean, it could go higher. It may not. We just don't know. Okay. But you can draw your line in the sand long short on the chart before it ever gets there. That's why we're so good at this in that room, because we know when this is going to decide to break. Okay. Now, keep in mind that until it breaks this, you're not really heading down. And this has to be below midband, which it is. So you can see it's going to be below midband for sure. Okay. So let's see what it did after that. Would you take another midband trade when it barely takes out a top? I don't. That's one thing you got to get in the habit of knowing too. Let me show you something that I look at. It takes out that top by that much. That trade's a given. You take out this top by this much right here. This is going to be in your face wrong, because they've got to break up. You know, they can't just, when you take out a top from 24 to 60, that's a pretty good break. When you take out a top from 60 to 70, that's a so-so break. Now, it doesn't mean you can't take it, but you got to be a lot more astute on your pricing. Okay. In other words, keeping your stops nice and tight. Okay. Everybody see that? All right. So let's see what happened. And it's trying to break. It did do a phantom. First time in the phantom after a trend change, looks like. That's probably 10 ticks. Maybe not, but I would, if I took that trade, unless they did it so fast, I wouldn't let them go back in that box. And that went back in that box. So that particular trade would be off the table, and you did not get 10 ticks. Decent trade though, as far as, you know, if it goes in your face though, you can't hold on to it because you can't put your stop way down here, especially. Now you can when they first break. In other words, if you get a phantom type trade way back here when they first break out of the short, that's a no-brainer to take and put your stop at line 0. This is not so much here because this has had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and almost 9. So no, you don't put all your eggs in one basket on that one. That's not your first time in the phantom. Okay, so let's see what happened. It's breaking. What do you think? Well, what we look for when it does something like this is that's actually breaking. That's kissing right there. Now, this is a little iffy on my side because you're barely breaking line in the sand long short. Your midband is also yellow. Let's see what happened after that. See, you would have gotten, that's not the way to trade. Notice how the midband kept you in the trade long instead. Okay. Now let's look to the left to trade the right and see what's going on now. You're kind of got a low here, a high here, a lower low there, a high, same low. Are they going to take out this 49? We'll see. That looks like it's going to actually break to me. You're getting a little lower high. Okay. Now let's go ahead and fast forward to where I opened the room. Okay. Because when I opened the room, there was a little trade on crude oil that we actually happened to take. Let me show it to you because I remember it from this morning. See, this is actually getting a red background. This is not a bad trade setup if you want to box it in because it's not taking out the high over here on the left. But I have trouble with that because that's a flatline midband and that could so easily just head up. Now, as a rule, when we get our red background, they don't. But it is what it is. It's a yellow midband, so I wouldn't be shorting it. But if you had a high, a low, higher high, they break this area again right here. Could you short that if it does break that? What if you said, well, you know what? I don't trust it until it breaks this area right here. That would be more conservative, okay? But keeping in mind that when you're looking at Lightning 3, see, they already broke this. This is actually broken, kissed, and rolled, but then it went up higher. So if you didn't take it, obviously long on the Phantom, then if it breaks this again, they could easily head down. But I'm not that gutsy. I would only take this break right here if they broke 24. And the reason for that is because, well, if you look at this, you still got a mid-band that's yellow. You still could easily stair step back up. It is getting a high, low, higher, high, and it did break this. So I'm thinking it may be shorting, but we don't know that for sure yet. Let's see, Charles B, did you say take top out by? Well, basically, what I like to do personally, if they take out these swings, I will go ahead and dip the toe with them. And then if another bar closes down, I'll take another one. Okay, like let's say, for instance, on this one, if I was real gutsy and I decided to sell 33, if it does go below it, let's see if it did. Yeah, you sell 33. Okay, then add one if it takes out 24. But that's still too gutsy for me because I don't like yellow midbands. Now, if it breaks support that's a 1, 2, 3, I'll take it because this is what you're looking for right here on a trend change. Is that high, that low, that lower high, and this lower low. That's kind of telling you they're trying to break down. Okay. Now, here's the key to it, though. Y'all have heard of like a Gartley? An ABC as a rule will just be barely taking out the previous swing and then they'll bounce in your face. That's how they take people out of trades and get them to change trends. But this trade here goes 1, 2, 3, and they break this. I'd short that in a heartbeat. Now, will it always be right? Not necessarily. But you're seeing the makings of a trend change. Just like we saw on the upside over here that was taking out this swing. Okay, it's like even here, let's say that you had a low here, higher low. See when they take this out? That's a 10-tick trade. And when you saw that, that's what it looked like right there. Okay, they try to roll, to give an example. You know where the line in Sand Long Short is because you can simply draw it on your chart. I look to the left to trade the right and I say, I've got another swing right here too. So you're gonna have to break this for me to try to get heading up. I'll do one here and I'll do one more here. And see, that one actually gave you a little quick 10 ticks. Okay, let's go back over here where we were at. Everybody sees what I'm trying to draw here, right? Because the whole idea of trading, you got to be right more than you're wrong. And super important that that happens, okay? Because you don't want to just give them your money, you know, have a trade and you give them their money, you have another trade, you give them the money. So what you got to do is you got to draw on your charts and you got to see where these little swings are. You know, like over here, you know, this has got a swing here on Lightning 3, looking left to trade the right, it's got a swing here at 27. It's got another swing area right here at 18. So, you know, if they go breaking these, they are heading down, and you've got to be ready to take them. Okay, so this did a little rollover, and see where it's just trying to test it. That got a lower high, by the way, and then you took that out. Now, is this trade going to work out? We don't know yet, but let's just see if it did. See, that trade worked for 10 ticks easily, and that's how you can see that. Okay, because this morning when my wife and I were trading, we actually took this little trade here on Phantom. I even told her, I said, well, we got a red background. I don't like that as much, but we got a Phantom Power Dot, and they gave us a nice 10 ticks, but then they rolled it right in our face. You see what I mean? So you got to be ready for that type of thing to happen because it happens. Okay, and then you ended up getting a pretty decent little trade. Okay, now when I open the room, let me show you how you can tell which way to go on these charts. Bear with me a second. Get rid of this stuff. Okay, so we opened the room at 47-ish, well, 734, right in that area. Okay. So overall trend looks like it's up. You got a higher low so far. You did get a nice little short. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to do that. But here's your low, your high, your lower low. This is the aggressive line in the Sand Long Short. Okay. This is a conservative line in the Sand Long Short. Okay. Because frankly, it broke down below it. So if it kisses it as resistance and takes it out, it would head up. Okay. Because you're always looking at support areas, resistance areas. You got a higher low on this thing than down here. See it just barely. So this little trade, if I remember right, was called in the room when it broke up through 12. But see, that's breaking our rule because it's under midband. So I looked to the left to trade the right, and I said, okay, you got a swing here at 24. You got a swing here at 24. I'm not going to take that trade until it takes out 24 because that's above midband. Okay. Now, what it turned out that this was your better entry right down here, right up here when it went through 12. Okay. That was a decent entry. But then you're thinking, whoa, wait a minute. That's a stair-stepping midband. So is it possible that this could head down? But it's breaking line in Sand Long Short. Now, usually as a rule, when it does something like that, you don't have to wait for it to break 24. turn on your band trader, and if it takes out line 4, take the trade, put your stop under line 3, you're risking 6 ticks. Okay, but anyway, we literally nailed that trade this morning, remember? And that's all you got to do is get one of those beautiful trades like that, and you can be done. Okay, because that trade turned out to be a very nice trade. Now, when do you get out of the trade though? Anybody? Same way, except you're going to do it a lot more aggressively. Because when you get these rollovers where they do up real nicely and then they start rolling over candles, you got to think about getting out of these things because you don't know how much higher they're going to go. But if you look at your little swings, you'd simply say, okay, well, I got in. Hey, they broke, they kissed. Gary called it because we called this live in the room this morning. All right, I kind of figure it would hit his head across here probably. See the little swing? Let's see what it did. See, it kissed it. And then I put my stop right there. Remember, in the room, I draw these areas so that we can get, very nicely out of a trade at a good spot. Okay. But you've also got to draw on your chart and see where your line in the sand long short is. Okay. So that turned out to be a very decent trade. It was called at 12. It was called at 24. It ends up going all the way to 51. Okay. That I would stay with because it just barely wicked that. Let's see if the next one goes up or down. You're up, so you're okay. I don't like that personally because it's trying to check that swing there. I'd be out of that trade the second it touches that line. I'd be out. Okay. So basically there you got you a nice little trade. Okay. Put that under your belt as a very good trade, right? All right. Then you look to the left to trade the right and you say, okay, I've got ABC type move. So I got low, high, higher, low, higher, high. So I really don't want to break this on any kind of a pullback. Okay. I also want to check my Fibonacci's to see where this trade could be heading. And in a case like this, I'd want that 50% if this is pulling back yet and draw you a line right there at that 50. And it happens to be at that swing. So let's see if we got it. Anybody remember this little trade too? This was also called in the room this morning. Right there when it hit that 50%. See that swing right there? And you were to box it in. Breaks the box, you're long if it does. And it did. Got to get a higher low. Still got to get a higher low. That's 10 ticks, by the way. And there's for sure 10 ticks or more. Okay. That was also a no-brainer because it was first time in the mid-band after a trend change. Okay. That's the way. Now keep in mind that that's the way you could tell which direction it's going. But I can tell you this, that if you actually draw on your charts, you're going to see right where the trade is going to change trends. Okay. Let's see if we can figure it out before it ever hits it. Right now, you haven't taken out the top. Okay. If it does, this is going to be our new line in sand long short. And it took it out. All right. Now, this is your line in sand long short. Also, little micro swing. This is for sure your line in sand long short at 21. Right this very moment anyway. Okay. Let's see what happened. Okay. You got stopped out of that trade. Went back below support. Now, that's a mid-band trade setting up right there. Let's see what your fibs are. Now, that's a 50. I'd really rather have a 61 on that small of a move, but that is a 61. I'd love to have a 76.4 on that small of a move, but I would box this little puppy in right across this area right here. Let's see if we can get another trade. You're in. And you stay, kind of stay above that line again, doesn't it? I think I'd be out of that trade. I don't like that when it does that. See the high, the low, the lower high, lower low. I'd more than likely be out of that trade because I just don't trust it when it does that. And that would turn red also. Everybody see that? I mean, could it go ahead and go up? Well, possibility. Let's see. If you want to stick with it with one more bar, let's see if it does. One more bar. No, I'd be out of that trade. I don't like that. Okay. Let's see what it did after that. That bar's up. No, still don't like it. See what I mean? That's why you got to get out at that 51 area. Now, keep it in mind that this could easily be another trade setup at 37, but you really don't want it taking it out because see, here's your high, low, lower high. So if it breaks this, they're not breaking up any longer, are they? So if I was to take this trade, I'd probably take a bar closed up if it tagged that line. Let's see if it does. That's tagging it. Now, if it breaks it, it's going to head down. You could be long on the trade. It looks like it's breaking out a little box. Let's see if it works. So far. Don't you love it when they're sloppy? That's a good sign. There you go. That's good enough right there, in my opinion. See if it hits that top. See why you take the coin? That's hitting that top right there. I'd be taking that trade off the table pretty quick now, simply because you got support here at 51. They're checking it. And if that bar closes down, I'd be out of that trade. See what it does. Not out yet. Out. Everybody sees why, right? Because they go double topping like that. They start playing around. You don't want to stick with that trade. Okay. Now, if you look at this, you have a high, you have a low, you have a lower high, and I'll just expand this over here instead. This is your high, your low, your lower high. Would this be a break of line in the sand long short? Yes or no? Yes. Would it be an area that you want to take a chance of it breaking? It is below mid-band. Now here's another area right here that's more your conservative area. See what I mean like that? Okay, if this doesn't take out that high and reestablish, then we know where our line in the sand long short is, don't we? Because we've drawn it on our charts correctly. Okay, so let's see if it does anything for us. Remember, we're already out of the trade. Could be back in it on that. I probably wouldn't have. Now that's a higher low. This is your line in sand long short now. Right here, it's above mid-band though. This is your line in sand long short next down. Everybody sees that, right? When you draw your line in sand long short, you don't really want to take a break if it's above mid-band, because you're going to sometimes barely go below mid-band, hold this swing instead, and then bounce. So in my personal opinion on this trade right here, they've really got to break this. Does anybody remember in the room this morning that was called live? Because that's what we do on our charts. We draw on our charts, okay? This one would be above mid-band, even though if it broke it, I'd be tempted to short it because that is a high, that's a low, that's a higher high. So if they break it, they're breaking left. See what happened. Anybody remember this trade setup? We had a short in. If it broke the line in the sand long short, you could add if it happened to break 22. Okay, so let's see what it did. You're short. You added one, and you got 10 ticks. Okay, see how you can tell when they're changing trends? Now keep in mind, even though this chart is basically from this morning, it kind of keeps you up to the fact that these were called. Okay, because when you see that they're breaking these line and sand long short trades, you can pretty much count on them not doing like a phantom. And that broke nicely, and we nailed that trade. Now, does everybody know, though, that once you get a short trade like that, you've got to start checking it for line in the sand long short again, okay? Now, as long as you've got a stair-stepping mid-band, you're not looking for longs, okay? See how that's pretty much just dropping like a stone? Now, I'd probably be out of that trade if it takes out that swing right across there. It did, so I'd be out of that trade. Now, what you want to do next is what? Anybody? You want to look for some kind of a pullback. What a lot of our people look for is the white power dot, okay? If you miss the trade, even to give an example, okay, then you kind of figure, okay, it broke support at 21. So is it going to hit its head at least up here? And if they roll with the power dot, you can take a trade like this because this is pretty much a monster move down. See what happened. Still broke, didn't it? Now, if you were still in the trade, remember, I think I actually said this morning, if you did take that trade out here, and keep in mind, if you get a nice trade like that, half of our people that trade with us, they don't care where a trade goes as long as it gets them their initial thrust, okay? Because if you put too loose of a stop on these trades, like say mid-band to give an example, remember the old days when Charles used to love mid-band as a stop? Well, that works great, you know, if you've got a $6 million account, but it doesn't work so great with Apex because those pullbacks with 2 or 3 contracts are huge and then they can change trends on you, okay? But keep in mind, if you got out of that trade just simply because it came a little bit deeper than you wanted it to, that's fine, that's a good trade, okay? But it doesn't mean you can't get back in it if you get a power dot too, okay? So let's see what happened. Now you've got a line in sand long short there at 5708, still heading down so far. Now you've got a line in sand long short at 96, right? You got a low, high, lower, low. Still rolled over so far, but it's starting to act a little funny. Yeah, I don't like that. That's actually kind of triple bottoming there. Y'all remember that this morning, that I warned everybody to be careful with that, because if they start going sideways like that, then they're going to go deeper, okay? So let's look and see if they break the trend at all. You got a low, you got a high, you got a lower low, and looking to the left to trade the right, you've got a swing right across here. Aggressive, long, conservative, long. So let's draw on our chart. And if it doesn't take it, by the way, you're not going long. Remember that trade? A little rollover trade? Can you take that trade? Turned out pretty good trade, didn't it? Now, did that go long? Anybody? No, remember this did this in real time this morning in the room. And you've got to, okay, let's say, for instance, that it broke this 96. Then to me, if they're going to really break up, then you would really want to box it somewhat. But I would want to take out that swing to the left. You see what I'm getting at? Because when you get a low, high, lower, low, lower, high, lower, low, this is actually looking left to trade the right. That's your high, your low. Anything in here is just noise. But when I look to the left and I say, okay, if this is noise, this would be a real trend change. Okay, and you got you a nice little trade, by the way, to the short side. Anybody remember that? Now, keep in mind, you didn't have to trade it because, you know, for instance, when Linda was trading this morning, this little trade got her to a little over 560, if I remember right, and I quoted her her figures, and it was weird because they were off a little bit. But I think the reason that they're off a little bit is because, when you're trying to trade 7, 8 accounts, to give an example, you're pretty much getting some crummy fills. And I don't know exactly why. For instance, Apex, what she was trading then was just Apex. She was trading Tradeify too, pardon me. And the Tradeify was the one that was off a little bit. Okay. So you got to figure that you got to know where these charts will change trends. Okay. Looking to the left to trade the right, you've got 62, 78 and lower. So there's your line in the sand long short. I always like to look to the left to trade the right. And the first swing I see is here. Second swing I see is here. That's a little bit more prominent because it's lightning 3. So I'm going to say right across here is line in the sand long short for conservative. Everybody see how you do that? And we'll see what it did. Does Rithmic or Tradevate give you better feels in general? Diane, it really kind of depends. In my opinion, it kind of depends on, how fast the market's going and stuff like that. So no, not necessarily. Okay. I think it just has to do with the sheer speed of these markets. Now, see, that's trying to break up. Everybody sees that, right? It's trying to break up. Now, would you go ahead and buy this thing long yet? No, as a matter of fact, I mentioned that we're looking even closer to 90 because frankly, even though that's a low, a high, and a much lower low, if you're going to take it, you've either got to take it, and if it goes back below the line, you got to get out, and then only go again if it goes back above the line again. Let's see what it did. So that went up above the line. Anybody remember this in the room this morning? Got a low here, high, starting to get higher lows. Now, if this broke this 79 again and this 90, I would take that long. Okay, but that's actually a decent phantom trade so far. Let's see what happened. Looking left to trade the right, there's your swing, 78. And it looks like it can be long. Right there, see it? Breaking it. So it broke it once, pull back, broke it again. Okay, now keep in mind, that's an aggressive trade, okay? The less aggressive trade is to obviously wait for a thrust and a pullback, which you can clearly do. With a stair-stepping midband, you can clearly do that. This is considered to be a little bit more aggressive, but see, you've drawn on your charts too. I drew in the room this morning. We had these lines drawn and everything. You got a little phantom rollover. Then it didn't make lower. It didn't just keep trucking down. It started consolidating, got a higher set of lows. So we actually went long on that trade when it broke that 78 again for that second time and turned out to be a 10-tick trade. Everybody remembers this in the room too, right? Because this was clearly called in the room also, okay? And the way you're going to do that is you're going to look at your charts and you're going to see where those swings are, okay? Very important. All right, now, if you haven't taken the trade yet, okay, you've got to wait for some kind of a pullback. I would kind of expect this trade to actually do something like this. Thrust, retrace, and thrust, something like that. Took it out, got your swing right across here. Always look at your Fibonacci's for your pullback. Now keep in mind, all you had to do is get that trade right there. Let's see if that even stopped it. Yep, that stopped it. So let's go up here. So now your trade setup from here to here, you're going to want at least a 50 to a 61. And very possibly even down to here at 76.4. Okay, so there's your trade setup right through here. You could actually do one contract, another contract here if they happen to come inside this little sweet box and then pop out of it. Let's see what it did. Still heading up so far. No, double topped. Well, they didn't retrace it yet. So there's your line in the sand long short, 97. Let's see, that's below midband a little bit. Look to the left to trade the right again. Not quite my favorite because that's not really a swing right there, but it is somewhat of one. So I'd want it to at least break that. And see there, it just perfectly kissed support. See how this works, everyone? So you can tell. Let's just see what it did all day, as a matter of fact. This is our line in the sand long short right there. Let's see what it did the rest of the day. See, it never broke your line in the sand long short yet. Yeah, this is all the way into tonight. So does everybody see now that you can clearly see, okay, you double topped for sure. They haven't taken it out any further. This is where we're at right this very moment. So if you look to the left to trade the right, you've got a high, a low, and a higher high. So if they take this area right here out, they're going to be heading down. But until they do, what are you doing as a trader? You're going long. This would have to break this area right here to me, at least something like this. Very possibly could be a phantom. So if you short it, you got to be careful. But it would have to break this. And we don't know what it's going to do because, frankly, that's the price it's at right now. Does everybody see that? And also you can tell too, if you do this on any chart as far as that goes, will you be right 100% of the time? No, not necessarily. But keep in mind that if you're right just a few times, you're going to be better off than the average trader because, frankly, we just trade for 2 hours a day and that's plenty, right? So during those 2 hours, we as traders can take these line and sand long shorts. We can take these breaks when they break. We can take these kisses when they kiss. And let's just go back on, let's go on gold to give an example at the news event. Okay, bear with me a second. I'll pause the chart. And then we're going to wrap in about 5 minutes. I'm going to take this all the way back to 9 o'clock. Bear with me a second. A lot of movement on gold. Does anybody remember that box? I didn't draw that box just now, by the way. Does anybody remember that box this morning? That is your line in the sand. See how you have a low, a high, a lower low, just barely. So then what I do is I look to the left to trade the right, and I see a swing right here also. See that little swing right across there? So I would take a long here, not a question about it, because that's a line in the sand long short. Okay, but could you actually add one if it took that out? Does anybody remember what gold did? We didn't take it out yet. That's right after the news. There's a higher low again, but we got our box drawn. See, it broke it the first time just barely. And if it takes it again, I'm in. Okay, stop's going to be right here at mid-band. There's your swing on the left. Add on a power dot. There you go on a power dot. And so you got a monster trade. Okay. Anybody remember how high gold went after that? It was huge. I couldn't even believe how good of a trade that was. But the whole idea is you've got to draw on your charts so that you can see where these things do decide to break. And let's look real quick. We got 4 minutes left. Remember this monster? There's a mid-band trade even. I called that one live too. Where's your line and sand long short on this chart though? If they take out this top, let's see if they did. They did. Line and sand long short. Right there. Is it below mid-band? Yes. Quite a bit below mid-band. So that's a good line and sand long short. This one's a line and sand long short, but is it above mid-band or below mid-band? Anybody? It's above mid-band. So no, I would not short that. Let's see. Let's keep going then. High here. Let's see. You got a low here. High, low, higher, high. Where's your line and sand long short on this chart? Anybody? It's breaking it. Could you box that in? We're thinking, well, I might get a phantom, but you're more than likely going to get a pretty good pullback after that kind of a move. See, even if you got to pull back to 38%, they come all the way down to here. So you got to be ready for that short if they do break. And does anybody remember that? We got that monster nice move to the upside. And I even called this trade here. This trade here was also called, but when you get into the second big thrust, retrace, thrust, retrace, thrust, you got to figure they're going to go at one point or another, they're going to break these line and sand long shorts and very possibly head the other way. Now, if you're not a gutsy trader, what you want to do is you want to wait for it to break, get the mid-band stair stepping, and then you would look for a, what type of trade? Anybody? As long as it stays below mid-band, there's your swing, low, high, lower, low. If it stays below that, you'd be looking for a short. There's your power dot right there. Stops right there at that line, you're short. Is it going to hold? We'll find out. Yep, 10 ticks, okay? So that's the way you can do this. You can tell when they break these line and sand long shorts. And when they break them, be a lot more careful of phantoms, because if they're breaking these lightning 3 type swings, you're more than likely heading down. And does anybody remember what gold did? This was the news. This was the pullback. Can you believe that? All the way down to where they broke out. And that's what they do continually. You'll see this time and time and time again. But you can also tell when they get ready to go the other direction too, because here's your line and sand long short right at this very moment. See what it did? There's your line and sand long short right now. And lo and behold, you broke it. You broke it a second time. You got 10 ticks. You got mid-band power dot, stair stepping mid-band. That's a long trade. And there you go. It's just easy way to see it if you just draw on your charts. And the only way to see it, and if you can't draw on your charts, you got to draw on your charts. That's all there is to it. Okay. Or you got to be able to see it without drawing on your charts. But this was about 920 right through here. This was breaking line in the sand long short. And it was telling you that they were trying to go up. And then they pulled back and they gave you a beautiful mid-band trade. Okay. But that gave you a quick 10 ticks even there. And what did you do after that? That's another phantom trade, by the way. Where's your line in sand long short? Well, it looks like they're breaking it again, doesn't it? And the whole thing is, keep in mind that they don't have to just give you every single trade like it's the best thing that ever happened to you. If you get a few good trades under your belt, like Linda did this morning to give an example, then walk away from the computer after that. You could be done. You don't have to keep chasing these things. Because frankly, if they break this area right here, that's your line in sand long short. And it looks like they want to break it. Let's see if they do. Yeah, they did. and there's a first mid-band after a trend change. Our stuff picks up these trades pretty well. Does it pick it up just perfectly? Nothing does, not in my personal opinion. But if you can draw on your charts and you can see these areas and in real time make those decisions, because when this was drawn on this chart this morning, this was just right after the news. And you could tell when they broke this area of that little box that I drew that they were going to head back up. And if you were ready to take that trade, whether you took it here or you took it at this swing right here, you still got your monster trade. Broke, kissed, headed up again. Always use that rule of thumb. If they break, give them a chance to come back below it, then break again. Or take one, hold your trade, add another one as it goes up through. And you'll do pretty well on your trading. Okay? All right. That's a wrap, everyone. Manoj, let's see, how would you actually take it? Market order? Well, basically, when I do something like this one right here this morning with gold, that trade right there, that was pretty much just seeing it and, yeah, just hitting market order. Drawing it on the chart. You know, could you have drawn a region like at line 6 or something like that? You could do that too. Okay, let's see. Deb says, would it be possible to put an audible signal in for trend changes and first time mid-band or flashing? Well, it does flash. And Pat and I are looking at this little trade here, potential long short, you know, where I'm drawing on these charts. The problem is we've got to do it whether it's going to be, you know, more aggressive or more conservative. And it kind of depends on what the market's actually doing at the time, because, you know, when I'm seeing it in the room, we're also seeing a lot of movement. You know, we're seeing these swings and everything. And so I draw on our charts so we can get these monster moves. So I hope this helped everybody a little bit, because when they decide to break these areas, see how that broke your line and send long short. And then they'll give you these monster nice moves back to the downside. It's just incredible how this works all the time. And our stuff is so good at catching it too. I mean, you could have missed this trade here that I drew in the room this morning and gotten this trade first time in the mid-band after a trend change. That was a monster. That was a good $1,000 trade. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll do it for real in the room tomorrow. And I'll draw on the charts as well as I possibly know how. All right. Thanks, everyone. Diane, does Rithmic or Trade of 8? Oh, you asked that earlier. Yeah, either one of those seems to be about the same. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in the morning. And I'll check and see what the news is in the morning, too. Okay. And I'll talk with GoToWebinar and see if I can figure out why I can put a cursor. This cursor is literally this big. Let me draw a little box and I'll show you. It's bigger than that. Well, every time it touches the top, it tries to change. But anyway, I'm putting that cursor inside that box right now. It's literally touching the top and the bottom of that box. Why that doesn't show is beyond me, because that cursor's huge. I'll have to shop around and see. Maybe they've done away with that guy's cursors. He's out of business. I know that. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.